I came home later than usual that evening, exhausted from work and anticipating the comfort of familiar chaos, my dog waiting at the door, tail wagging, a small bundle of energy and loyalty I had depended on for years. But the house felt different, quiet, too quiet. As I stepped inside, my mom appeared from the kitchen, her expression unreadable, a forced calm in her eyes that immediately set off alarms in my mind. "We sold the dog," she said, almost casually. "Your sister's kids needed a pet. You wouldn't understand. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. Your one tap truly motivates me to keep creating for you." For a moment, I couldn't process her words. Sold? My dog, my constant companion through nights of stress, the one being who had never judged me, never sided with anyone else in our chaotic family dynamics, was gone. I felt a sharp pang of disbelief and anger, but I held it in, knowing that reaction would only fuel the drama my family thrived on. I observed my mom carefully. She avoided my gaze, likely expecting either tears or immediate anger. My sister sat nearby, feigning innocence, as if this act of entitlement was completely justified. They had made a decision about my life, my property, my bond, without even consulting me, assuming my compliance was automatic. I let silence stretch, letting them sit with the weight of their words. I thought about all the times my sacrifices and patience had been overlooked, all the small injustices I had endured quietly. This was another escalation, another reminder that my boundaries had never been respected. But something in me had changed. I was no longer willing to let assumption and entitlement dictate my reality. I set my bag down, slowly, my movements deliberate. I wasn't going to yell, I wasn't going to beg, and I wasn't going to submit. For years, my family had assumed that obedience and patience were constants in my life. They had never considered that I could plan, act deliberately, or take control of situations they thought were theirs to manipulate. Tonight, the rules had shifted. They had underestimated me once again, and I knew exactly how to respond, not with emotion, but with calm, calculated action that would ensure respect and accountability. This was no longer about a dog. It was about boundaries, fairness, and reclaiming authority in a household that had long assumed my compliance. And for the first time, I was prepared to enforce them. I didn't react immediately. Instead, I retreated to my office, closed the door, and began reviewing everything that had happened over the past months and years. My dog was just the latest in a long series of decisions where my family assumed they could override my life without consequence. Unpaid bills, financial exploitation, public humiliation, emotional manipulation, they all formed a pattern. This was not isolated. I began compiling documentation. Receipts, bank statements, texts, emails, and social media posts formed a timeline of responsibility I had carried, contrasted with the entitlement my sister exercised freely. Every instance she had relied on me without acknowledgement, every time my parents had condoned her behavior, was now logged. Then I researched the adoption or sale procedures for pets in our state. I discovered loopholes, obligations, and rights that had been ignored in my dog's transfer. I contacted local authorities discreetly to confirm that the sale could be challenged. The more I dug, the more I realized that not only had they acted without consent, but they had also violated rules regarding guardianship and sale of personal property. The next day, I called a family meeting under the pretense of discussing household responsibilities. My parents and sister arrived, confident, assuming I would either shrug or apologize for overreacting. They had never anticipated that I would come prepared, armed with evidence, facts, and a plan. I began calmly laying out the situation and my rights. I presented the documentation showing their pattern of entitlement and neglect of boundaries. I explained the legal issues surrounding the dog's sale and highlighted the emotional impact on both me and the dog. I did not shout or accuse. I spoke with precision, letting the facts speak for themselves. My sister attempted to interject, claiming the kids needed the dog more, that I was overreacting, that I had no proof of harm. I responded with emails, photos, vet records, and messages that showed my care and responsibility. Each attempt at manipulation collapsed under the weight of documentation and clarity. My parents grew visibly uncomfortable. Their previous amusement was replaced with unease. They realized their assumptions about my compliance had been misplaced. They had underestimated my patience, my strategic thinking, and my ability to act decisively when boundaries were crossed. By mid-afternoon, the atmosphere had shifted. I established clear rules. No future decisions regarding my property, pets, or personal space would be made without my consent. I would not tolerate manipulation, guilt-tripping, or entitlement. Every attempt to overstep would meet firm, documented accountability. My sister's usual smug confidence faltered. She understood, in that moment, that my compliance was no longer a guarantee. My parents, too, were forced to acknowledge that their assumptions about my patience and willingness to sacrifice had limits. By evening, the family meeting ended with no theatrics, no yelling, only a quiet, undeniable shift in the dynamic. I had asserted control without anger, using preparation, evidence, and calm authority. Boundaries were clear. Accountability was established. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of liberation. This wasn't just about reclaiming a pet. It was about reclaiming authority, enforcing respect, and finally setting limits in a family that had long taken them for granted. I had turned entitlement into opportunity, and the family hierarchy had changed forever. I didn't react immediately. Instead, I went to my office, closing the door to think and plan. My dog was just the latest in a long history of my family assuming they could override my life. Unpaid bills, public humiliation, emotional manipulation, it all formed a pattern. I gathered proof. Texts, emails, receipts, and photos showing my consistent responsibility and care contrasted with my sister's entitlement. I also researched legal protections for pets, confirming that the sale had violated my rights. The next day, I called a family meeting under the guise of discussing household matters. My parents and sister arrived, confident I would overreact or comply. I remained calm. I laid out the facts, presenting documentation of their entitlement and my obligations, highlighting the legal issues and emotional impact. My sister tried to argue, saying the kids needed the dog more, but I countered with proof of my care and responsibility. My parents grew uneasy, realizing their assumptions about my compliance were wrong. By the end, I set boundaries. No more decisions about my property or pets without my consent, no manipulation, and accountability for overstepping. My sister's confidence faltered. My parents' amusement turned to caution. The shift was quiet but undeniable. I had reclaimed authority, enforced respect, and made it clear entitlement had limits. This wasn't just about a dog. It was about reclaiming my space and power in a family that had long taken it for granted. By nightfall, the family understood the rules had changed. My dog's absence had sparked clarity. Entitlement no longer dictated my life. Boundaries were set, respect enforced, and I finally reclaimed control, proving patience, preparation, and calm authority outweighed manipulation.